It's time for bookkeeping, beer, and BS.
Lay the groundwork. How the heck does digital tracking work?
So that one,
yeah,
it's like...
That's not a loaded question at all, by the way.
Not at all.
Well, I can tell you for the next 5 hours. Let's do it. Maybe don't let me, Aaron. What do you say?
Well, I'll start it with a question. If you knew exactly which dollar brought someone in, how empowered would you be to be able to scale your business 10 times faster than you can already?
10 times. I'd be 10 times empowered to scale 10 times faster.
It's the proof. It's the proof that you know that you have a machine that you can put $1 into and get 10 out, right?
Yeah. Taking the uncertainty out to make a confident decision, which, like we were talking about right at the get-go, like that's how bookkeeping and marketing is supposed to work. If you have a good bookkeeper, you know what your cost of goods sold is, and you feel confident in making the next hire decision because you know the market you're going to make.
Bookkeeping is just a scoreboard, essentially.
Yeah.
I think. And money is points. I like all the points.
Points.
Get more points than you lose.
I like it.
So think of attribution tracking almost like the bookkeeping of marketing. That is essentially what it is. And it's to kind of dive into like how to track all this stuff. Number one, we're all being tracked all over the internet already. Like Google knows where you've gone to. It's kind of like you have the weird conversation, all of a sudden you get ads for it. Like that's all part of tracking. Our tracking works primarily through call tracking and like individual like presence tracking, I suppose.
Yeah.
And like assigning, this is an identifier for this person and this is their journey through the whole thing. And then based on what ends up causing them to give us a call or reach out or fill out a form, our system will ding and say, okay, here, they came from here. This was their journey. And this is where we're assigning the value, essentially.
So
is that a good way to distill it into 20 seconds, Chris?
Yeah, if anybody wants to dig into it, like I would say to look up like attribution modeling, because attribution modeling is kind of the science of assigning points to the touch points. So
that's what I was wondering, like how, so in my example, if they heard us on the radio and then they happen to get a Facebook ad that they saw, and then eventually they're like, oh yeah, these guys, and then they go look us up and Google us, and then they buy and they say they found us on Google. It has a way to say like, yep, they heard that because that ran at the time that they did this and that and that and that, and therefore, one client is worth 1 point, allocate it accordingly.
Right. So
holy moly, that blows my mind.
There's different models, there's first touch models, last touch models, even points models, where you can adjust your modeling depending on, it's largely based on how your sales cycle works. So a lot of the modeling that I tend to lean towards is kind of more like even points, like every touch point gets a point, is counting toward getting us over the line. And then having a system in place that can track those points along the way. So a radio ad would be tricky to track, though, in particular, because...
Well, usually you can have a phone number on that radio ad. Call this number, and then it's unique to that,
Exactly.
But if the radio ad gets them to Google you, then that's a little tricky. What I would do there is using coupon codes or something like that, where they have a specific code that they ask, and then you can attribute them back to an offline source. But we won't get too technical. There are a million tricks to track everything. The key is to have it all set up properly when you run it, so that you can look back. Because the big mistake that I see a lot of people making is thinking that they can retroactively collect data. No, that's not a thing. If you don't have Google Analytics installed on your website, that data is gone forever until you start tracking it. So yeah, getting an attribution tracking system in place is the first trick for sure.
Dig it. How is there a way to say this person has 5 points and this person only has 1? Like the person that just goes Googles and finds you versus the person that has a history with you and found you a bunch of places. Like, can it tell that? And I guess secondly, if it can, what's the average? Like, how many points do you need to score?
So the points are attributed to the ad platforms, not the contact. So more what it is we're saying, like, I'm terrible at math. I'm a film student. I like the art side, and I'm very indecisive. So that's where I fell in love with like statistical proof. But mental math, forget about it. But like essentially each client is worth 1 point, and then every touch point gets divided by that one.
Gotcha.
So if it took 8 touches across 8 different platforms to get there, it would be an 8th assigned to each one. And
but
then
you could reverse engineer that to say, like, based on that fraction, therefore it would take this many touches on average to get a client.
Yeah. More what I'm normally looking at is how many, like the client to cost ratio, like the points to cost ratio. So if this YouTube ad costs $1 and it generated 1/4 of a client, you know, you can start to do the math on, okay, so it's going to cost $4 on this same YouTube ad to generate, you know what I mean? So that way you can start to attribute the cost to the touches, and then you can see whether or not the costs are making sense for the results that you're getting.
Yeah.
So
we're not that interested in like individual, like we are somewhat interested in individual journeys because we do want to model them, but we're more interested in what the data says about each individual channel and how effective the channel is at acquiring the customer. Because the number we're really looking for is cost of acquisition. And then if we can compare that to the lifetime value of the customer, then it's just a really simple math equation of, are we spending less money than they're worth to us, right?
Yep.
Hey, what's up, business nerd? Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you learned a heck of a lot watching that episode. Do me a favor, subscribe right down here. And if you really like what you saw, you got more goods right here. Check out this one or check out this one and do this. Go subscribe. Appreciate you. Work smarter, work harder, go earn yourself some pride. Catch you on the next one.